Hi beautiful ladies, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about the demonizing of beauty that exists in some church spaces, specifically some Christian spaces. Now, I know that not every Christian has this belief, but as someone who has grown up in the Christian community, I do think that it is important to talk about this because I've seen quite a few comments on my channel and other channels where we'll talk about prioritizing your beauty and, making an effort to look good so that you can increase your pretty privilege. And some people would kind of feel as if it's necessary to leave a comment saying that, we should focus on the heart and we should focus on our character and not really care about how we look, as if the two are mutually exclusive and as if you cannot be attractive both internally and externally. And this is a belief that a lot of Christians have where they kind of misconstrue Bible verses, specifically the Bible verse that says that you should, prioritize your character and don't care so much about the external. But that doesn't mean that you should completely neglect your looks or think that your looks are not important and that people will not judge you, especially as a woman, by your looks. There's a verse in the Bible that says that man looks on the outward appearance, but God judges the heart, which means that God is pretty much telling you that human beings look at the outward appearance more than they look at anyone's character, because human beings like pretty things. Human beings like to look at the physical. To human beings, seeing is believing. One thing that I do notice about the Bible is that whenever the Bible made mention of a beautiful woman, the Bible would tell you multiple times that that woman was beautiful. And so I find it kind of disingenuous when some Christians try to weaponize beauty as a way to humble women and kind of subdue them and make them, like, control them and make them feel insecure, and ultimately to, first of all, not realize their beauty or to be ashamed of it, and then secondly to sort of level the playing field, if you will, by making that woman feel as if she's beautiful, and if she acknowledges her beauty or if she's aware of it, she mustn't be vain or she mustn't be boastful if she wants to truly show that she is a woman of God, if you will. And men and women do this to women as well. And I've noticed that this behavior, this rhetoric doesn't exist for Christian men. Like, if a Christian man is attractive, he is trusted. He is seen as someone that you can trust, especially in megachurches. If you notice, a lot of the pastors are these charismatic, attractive young men or middle-aged men. And if they're not conventionally attractive, most of them are put together. They're dressed to the nines. They always have well-tailored three-piece suits. Many of them get braces or veneers. They have a perfect, bright white smile. They're well-groomed, not a hair is out of place, because they understand the importance of optics and the importance of looking good. And this works in their favor because many of you have probably heard of the countless scandals that many of these megachurch leaders have been involved in. People are very quick, even when there's evidence and proof that the person did what they were accused of doing, people will always come to their defense. People will always say, oh, we should not accuse, only God can judge, and touch not the Lord's anointed. But if it's a scandal involving a woman like Megan Good, the former wife of Pastor Devon Franklin, and Erica Campbell, then she's not afforded such grace. And then they'll misuse the Jezebel persona, if you will, to demonize a woman who refuses to subdue herself or refuses to cover up her beauty. And this is especially true if something happens with a woman. Say, for example, there's a rumor, whether it's true or not, as long as that woman is involved in some drama, whether she placed herself there or not, they will always attribute her to be the troublemaker or to be the Jezebel simply because she looks good. And I remember when I used to go to this church, there was an issue with this big back, I'll call her, who seemed to be threatened by my presence at church. Like, for example, I was a greeter, and so I would open the door for people when they came. And so I would open the door and I noticed that she would always go through the other door, like kind of behind me and the other greeters, which is like considerably out of her way. But she would do it all to avoid me. And like if we arrived, there was one time where we arrived at church at the same time. And instead of her entering through the front door with me and everybody else, she went through the back door. Like it was so pathetic. And I remember that like ultimately I spoke to my small group leader, who was a woman, and the pastor's wife. The pastor's wife was responsible for dealing with issues pertaining to women. And so I said, hey, I noticed that there was this thing after speaking with this young lady. And she said, yeah, I just feel uncomfortable by you. And, I just can't place it. And I don't want you to stop coming around just because of how I feel. And I said, okay, well, can you tell me like what I said or did to make you feel uncomfortable? And to this day, she still couldn't tell me because nothing happened. But ultimately, the pastor kind of ignored my request to kind of deal with the issue the way that we were instructed to do. So I ended up leaving that church. And then I remember there was a young lady that was going through a similar situation with Big Back's friend. But we went to like this Christian event and like there were some people there from the church that we went to. The young lady ended up leaving the church as well because of her situation. And we didn't sit down and say, oh, we're both going to leave. Like we both just happened to leave at the same time. But yeah, like we saw this mutual woman at the church and she kind of and was like, oh, hey girls, like it was the girl and her sister. And then kind of like gave me like a disapproving up and down look as if to kind of say that I was the one who influenced those girls to stop going to that church without even considering that maybe the situations were isolated and we just both happened to stop going to that church at the same time. But that woman and other women kind of felt threatened by me because I looked different from the average Black woman. And the pastor's wife, of course, was an unambiguous Black woman. Big Back was a light-skinned Black woman, but like she was a Big Back, so she had her own like insecurities and issues. But because I guess was a threat to other women because I looked different, they automatically painted me as a troublemaker. And I've always been an introvert. I've always kept to myself, but I always kind of got the short end of the stick because I was beautiful. And other young women at church of various races and ethnicities went through similar things. We were automatically demonized because we were beautiful and we were quiet and we kind of weren't in people's faces. They automatically didn't trust us and painted us as the Jezebel troublemakers. Honestly, if you are a young woman who goes to a church where they have the same mentality and they demonize people, you should not be in a space where you are demonized. Especially because Christianity is all about love and community and fellowship. And so if you find yourself in a church where like the women are insecure or like they shun you because you're different and you know that you're not problematic, you go there and you mind your business, I strongly recommend that you find another church to go to or even consider just watching an online service until you can find something suitable. Because as much as people don't want to admit it, church hurt and being ostracized at church can really play on your mental health. And it can also affect your spiritual walk because you kind of go through this process where you think like, okay, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm not Christ-like enough. Maybe I should be more humble. And then you start to sell yourself short by trying to conform to what these women think you should be. You should be less threatening. So maybe I won't dress up as much because they don't dress up. I won't do my hair because they don't do their hair. I won't wear as much makeup, even though you already don't, because these women kind of don't. And then before you know it, you end up looking frumpy and plain like them. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being plain. If you are plain and that's your look and it works for you, that's totally cool. But you as an individual shouldn't be demonized or convinced that your beauty is a sin. Because if God didn't want you to be beautiful, you wouldn't have been created beautiful. And you wouldn't have the desire to take care of yourself and to dress up. I don't know why people think that God expects us to be plain. But if you read in Proverbs 31, the Bible says that like she took care of her household. She made sure that like those people who worked for her were taken care of, like her house was in order. But it also said that she dressed herself really well. Like she wore robes of scarlet, I think, or purple, like a deep purple, like that was very, very expensive fabric to make, because back then, it's not like today where you could get any color like from anywhere for super cheap. If you wanted like scarlet or like a deep purple, you had to find a very, very rare dye to make that. And it was a very long and lengthy process to create, first of all, the dye, and then secondly, to dye your garments that color and for it to last. So that woman clearly didn't spare any expense in making sure that she had the latest fashion, but she also had aspirations and goals and qualifications about her. She was a very influential woman. She was literally the total package. She was beautiful, but she was also smart and successful. She was a businesswoman. She had it going on. And many of you are like that today. You know, in modern society, most women work because they have to, but also there are women who work because they want to. You know, they want to be fulfilled in all aspects of their life. They want to look good. They want to be fit. They want to have a successful career or business. And so they work very, very hard and diligently to achieve all these things. And they have great success, and rightfully so. So if you are a Christian woman listening to this, please do not let church people demonize you, especially, again, if you go to a mega church where the pastor looks good and his wife looks good, but then they always preach this thing where they're like, oh, you should be humble and you should give all your money to the church for the furtherance of God's kingdom and ministry. Honestly, at the end of the day, all of these talking points are just manipulation tactics to level the playing field for insecure women. Insecure women who they themselves, for many reasons, are not confident enough to be the best versions of themselves. They've convinced themselves that being beautiful and taking care of yourself is a sin, and so they let themselves go. And also, number two, men who they know that their woman doesn't look good, and so they don't want another woman to look good, because many of them think like, oh, that woman's gonna make me stumble and sin if I look at her because she's beautiful, as if he doesn't have control over himself. Like, give me a break. So stay away from churches where they have that mentality. But unfortunately, you can't avoid people who think like this, whether you're at church or at work or wherever. There's always going to be people who are going to be threatened by the pretty girl, both men and women. So you need to have ironclad boundaries, and just not allow people to penetrate those boundaries. But also, you need to be confident enough in yourself to know that, as the Bible says, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you have the right to be beautiful. You don't need to explain it to anyone. You don't need to try to dumb yourself down or dim your light to make anyone feel comfortable. So take this as a sign to be unapologetically confident. Maybe if you're interested, just read up on Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Queen Esther's stories. Learn some of their beauty routines. Learn about how those women behave themselves and carry themselves. They were all unapologetically beautiful and didn't shy away from that. So, and yeah, take this as permission and as a sign that God doesn't hate beautiful women, but in fact, He created your beauty by design and was intentional about that. Okay? Let me know what you think about this video. Have you heard about these women and their stories? Do you have similar experiences? I'd love to hear more about your experience. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.